The security guard's hands were shaking, not much. Just enough that he could feel it in his fingertips as he stood. Outside the private entrance of Clarence's house, his name was Daniel Ross, and in 23 years of service to the royal family, he had never been asked to do what he was about to do: search a prince. Not just any prince. Prince Harry. The message had come through his earpiece just minutes before. Direct, cold.
Yes.
Prince Harry arrives in 8 minutes. You will conduct a full security sweep. Check for recording devices, cameras, phones, everything. Daniel had asked why. The voice on the other end went silent for 3 long seconds. Then, orders from the king himself. It was all. No explanation, no context. Just orders, and now Daniel stood alone at the side entrance, away from the main gates, away from the cameras. This wasn't normal protocol. When royals visited other royals, there were no searches. There was trust. There was family, but something had changed. Before we continue this story, if you love deeply emotional and true-feeling stories that reveal the hidden moments behind closed doors, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Daniel checked his watch. 5 minutes now. His mind raced through possibilities. Why would the king order a search of his own son? What could Harry be carrying that was dangerous enough to warrant this? A recording device meant someone feared their words being captured, being leaked, being used against them. The royal rift had been all over the news. Interviews, books, accusations. But this was something else. This was fear. This was broken trust at the highest level. A black car appeared at the far end of the drive. No flags, no fanfare. Just a simple vehicle with tinted windows. Daniel's chest tightened. This was real. This was happening. The car stopped 15 feet away. The engine went silent. For a moment, nothing moved. Daniel could hear his own breathing. The wind rustled through the trees lining the driveway. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out. Then the door opened. Prince Harry stepped out. He wore a dark suit, no tie. His face was calm, but his eyes told a different story. They were tired, guarded. The eyes of someone who had been fighting for a long time. Harry walked toward Daniel slowly. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Daniel saw something that nearly broke him. Recognition, Harry knew. Somehow he knew why Daniel was standing there. "Your Royal Highness," Daniel said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm going to need to conduct a security check before you enter." Harry stopped 3 feet away. His jaw tightened. "A security check?" "Yes, sir." "For what?" Daniel hesitated. The words felt like poison in his mouth. "Recording devices, sir? Phones? Cameras?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Harry's face didn't change, but something in his eyes dimmed. A light going out. He looked past Daniel toward the building where his father waited, then back at Daniel. "My father asked for this," Harry said quietly. "It wasn't a question." Daniel nodded. Harry took a breath. For a moment, Daniel thought he might turn around and leave, just walk away and never come back. But he didn't. Instead, Harry spread his arms slightly to the sides. "Go ahead," he said, his voice hollow. "Do what you have to do." Daniel stepped forward, and as his hands began the search, he realized something terrible. This wasn't about security. This wasn't about safety. This was about a father who no longer trusted his son. Daniel's hands moved with professional precision, but inside he felt sick. He patted down Harry's jacket, checked the pockets, ran his fingers along the seams where a small device could hide. Every second felt like an hour. Harry stood perfectly still. His arms remained slightly raised. His face was a mask now, showing nothing. But Daniel could feel the tension radiating from him like heat.
"Oh, sir."
Daniel asked quietly. Harry reached into his inside pocket and pulled out his mobile. He held it out. Daniel took it, checked it thoroughly, then handed it back. Their fingers touched briefly. Harry's hands were cold. "Anything else electronic on you, sir?" "Watch, earbuds?" Harry lifted his wrist, showing a simple analog watch. No smart features. No recording capability. "Just this," he said. His voice was flat, empty. Daniel nodded and stepped back. You're clear, sir. Harry lowered his arms. He looked at Daniel for a long moment. How long have you worked here, Daniel? Daniel was surprised Harry knew his name. 23 years, Your Royal Highness. 23 years. Harry repeated it like he was tasting something bitter. Have you ever had to do this before? Search one of us. No, sir, never. Harry smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only sadness. Then I guess I'm the first. The first one dangerous enough to need searching. Sir, it's fine. Harry cut him off gently. You're just doing your job. I know that. He glanced toward the building again. He's inside? Yes, sir. Waiting in the oak room? Harry nodded slowly. He seemed to be gathering himself, preparing for something. Is anyone else in there? Advisors? Staff? I believe it's just His Majesty, sir. Just him. Harry's voice was barely a whisper. Just the two of us. Daniel watched as Harry straightened his jacket, rolled his shoulders back. It was like watching a soldier prepare for battle. And in a way, Daniel thought, maybe that's exactly what this was. Thank you, Daniel, Harry said. Then he started walking toward the entrance. Daniel should have let him go. Should have stayed at his post. But something made him speak. Sir. Harry stopped and turned. Daniel struggled to find the words. He was breaking protocol, breaking a dozen rules, but he didn't care. Whatever happens in there, sir, I hope you both find what you're looking for. Harry's expression softened slightly. What I'm looking for? He shook his head. I'm looking for my father, but I don't think he's in there anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke. Then Harry turned and walked through the door. Daniel returned to his post, but he couldn't shake what had just happened. He had served the royal family his entire adult life. He had protected them, respected them, believed in them. But standing there, searching a son on his father's orders, he had felt something crack. Inside the oak room, Harry walked alone down the corridor. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. The walls were covered with paintings of ancestors, kings and queens who had ruled for centuries, his bloodline, his history. But right now, it all felt like it belonged to someone else. He reached the heavy wooden door, took a breath, knocked twice. Come in. His father's voice, formal, distant. Harry opened the door. King Charles stood by the window, his back to the entrance. He wore a dark suit. His hands were clasped behind him. He didn't turn around immediately. Hello, Pa, Harry said quietly. Charles remained still for another moment. Then he turned. His face was composed, but Harry could see the weariness in his eyes. The weight of the crown? The weight of everything. You came, Charles said. You asked me to. Wasn't certain you would. After everything, Harry stepped further into the room. The door clicked shut behind him. They were alone now. Father and son. King and prince. Strangers who shared blood. I was searched, Harry said. No accusation in his voice. Just a statement of fact. Charles didn't flinch. Yes, you ordered it. I did. Harry nodded slowly. You don't trust me? Charles turned back to the window. Trust is earned, Harry. And lately he trailed off. Lately what? Harry's voice grew harder. Lately, I've told the truth. Lately, I've stopped pretending everything was fine. Lately, you've made our private pain very public. Charles's voice was cold now. You've taken our family's struggles and sold them to the world. I shared my story. You betrayed your family. The words landed like a punch. Harry felt his hands curl into fists at his sides. I tried talking to you. For years, you wouldn't listen. So you ran to the media instead. I ran to survive. Charles spun around, and for the first time, Harry saw real anger in his father's face. Don't talk to me about survival. I've survived in this family for 75 years. I've survived being told who to love, who to marry, how to live every single day of my life. I survived. Without destroying everyone around me. The room fell silent. Both men stared at each other across the space that felt like an ocean. Harry's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Is that what you think I'm doing? Destroying you? Charles's anger faded, replaced by something worse. Resignation. I think you're so focused on your own wounds that you can't see you're creating new ones. And in that moment, standing in the room where kings had made decisions for centuries, Harry realized why his father had ordered the search. It wasn't about recording devices. It wasn't even about trust. It was about control, about keeping secrets, about maintaining an image, even if it meant treating your own son like a threat. Harry moved to one of the leather chairs and sat down slowly. Not because he was tired, but because his legs suddenly felt unsteady. Charles remained standing by the window, maintaining the distance between them. Do you remember when I was 8? Harry asked suddenly. After Mom died, I had that nightmare. The same one, every night, for months. Charles's expression flickered. Harry, I would wake up screaming, and you would come into my room. You never said much. You would just sit on the edge of my bed until I fell back asleep. Sometimes you'd stay there all night. Charles turned away slightly, but Harry could see his jaw tighten. Needed you then, Harry continued. And you were there. Not as a king, just as my father. When did that change? When did I become someone you needed to protect yourself from? You were a child then, Charles said quietly. Children need comfort. Adults need boundaries. Adults need fathers too. The words hung in the air. Charles walked to his own chair but didn't sit. He gripped the back of it, his knuckles white. You have no idea what it's like, Charles said finally. Being in this position, every word I say is analyzed. Every decision questioned. I've spent my entire life preparing for this role, and now that I have it, he paused. Now I have a son who uses his pain as a weapon against his own family. Harry leaned forward. Is that really what you think? That I wanted to hurt you? What else am I supposed to think? You write a book? You do interviews? You share private conversations without permission. Every revelation feels like another cut. Harry's voice rose slightly. What about the years of being second? Of being the spare? Of watching everyone protect William, while I was left to figure things out alone? You were protected. I was managed. There's a difference. Charles finally sat down. For a moment, he looked old, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I did the best I could with what I knew. My father wasn't exactly a model of emotional availability. I know, Harry said softly. And I'm sorry for what you went through. I really am. But Pa, that's the point. We're supposed to break these cycles, not pass them on. Outside, Daniel stood at his post. He could see nothing through the thick walls, but he imagined the conversation happening inside. He had seen the look on Harry's face as he walked in. The resigned determination, the hurt buried beneath layers of defense. Daniel thought about his own son, Marcus. 25 years old now. They had their fights, their disagreements. But Daniel had never once thought of his son as a threat. Never once felt the need to search him before letting him into his home. What kind of wound runs so deep that a father fears his own child's words? Inside, Charles spoke again. When you left the family, when you moved away, I thought perhaps distance might help. That time apart might heal things. And did it? No, it made everything worse. The interviews. The book. Each one felt like you were pulling further away, while simultaneously dragging us all into public view. Harry stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where he had played as a child. I wasn't trying to drag you anywhere. I was trying to breathe. To exist outside of the suffocation of protocol and silence. Call it suffocation? I call it duty. Maybe it's both. Charles was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller. Do you know what the worst part is? The part that keeps me awake at night? Harry turned to look at his father. I read your book, Charles continued. Every page, every word. And in it, I saw a son who was hurting, who felt alone, who needed his father. His voice cracked slightly. And I couldn't understand why you never told me these things directly. Why you had to tell the world first. I tried, Harry said, his own voice thick with emotion. How many times did I ask for a conversation? How many times was I told to wait, to be patient, to let things settle? There was always a reason it wasn't the right time. So you made the time by going public. I made the time by refusing to disappear. Charles rubbed his face with both hands. Your mother would be heartbroken to see us like this. The mention of Diana sent a sharp pain through Harry's chest. Mom would understand why I left. She tried to leave too, remember? She knew what it felt like to be trapped. She also knew what it felt like to regret public revelations, Charles said quietly. The Panorama interview. She told me later that she wished she had handled things differently. Harry felt his anger rise again. Don't use Mum to make your point. You don't get to speak for her. Not speaking for her. I'm speaking from watching her pain. From seeing what happened when private grief became public spectacle, that was different. Was it? The question sat between them like a living thing. Harry wanted to argue, to defend his choices. But a small part of him wondered, had he learned from his mother's struggles, or had he repeated them? I didn't come here to fight, Harry said finally. You asked me to come. You said it was important. Charles stood and walked to a small table near the fireplace. On it sat a silver frame. He picked it up and looked at it for a long moment before handing it to Harry. It was a photograph. Harry and William as young boys, sitting with their father on the steps of Highgrove. All three of them were laughing. Charles had his arms around both sons. They looked like a family, like they belonged together. I keep this on my desk, Charles said. I look at it every day and wonder where those boys went. Where that father went? Harry stared at the photo. He remembered that day. It was summer. They had been playing in the garden. For a few hours, everything had been simple, normal, happy. They grew up, Harry said quietly, and growing up revealed all the cracks we were too young to see before. Charles took the frame back and returned it to the table. So what do we do now? How do we move forward from here? Harry looked at his father, really looked at him, and what he saw was complicated. A man bound by duty, wounded by betrayal, but also, beneath everything, a father who was lost. I don't know, Harry admitted, but searching me before I could even enter the building? That's not a starting point. I needed to know, Charles said. I needed to know this conversation would stay between us. What then? You would have turned me away? Charles didn't answer. And in that silence, Harry found his answer. His own father would have chosen secrecy over seeing his son. Asterisk Harry set the photograph down carefully, as if it might shatter. You know what the saddest part is? You're so afraid of what I might reveal that you can't see what you're doing right now as its own revelation. Charles frowned. What do you mean? This moment, right here. A father so broken with his son that he has him searched like a criminal. That's the real story, Pa. Not anything I could say in an interview. Charles moved back to his chair and sank into it. He suddenly looked every one of his 75 years. I'm trying to protect the institution, the monarchy, everything I've inherited and everything I'll pass on to William. And where do I fit in that? Where have I ever fit? You're my son, but I'm not the heir. I'm not essential to the plan. Harry's voice wasn't angry anymore, just tired. I've always known that. We all knew it, but I thought, maybe foolishly, that being your son meant something beyond the line of succession. Charles leaned forward, elbows on his knees. It does mean something. You think this is easy for me? You think I enjoy this distance between us? Then why maintain it? Why not just talk to me? Really talk. Without advisors, without protocols, without worrying about who's listening. Because I'm the king now, Harry. I can't just be your father. I have to be the monarch. I have to think about the crown, the commonwealth, the future. What future? Harry interrupted. A future where your sons don't speak? Where your grandchildren grow up barely knowing each other? That's the legacy you want? The words hit hard. Charles's face tightened with pain. He looked away, staring at nothing. You think I don't want more? Charles said quietly. You think I don't lie awake wishing things were different? But wanting and doing are not the same thing. I have responsibilities. Harry laughed bitterly. That word has been used to justify every cold shoulder, or every canceled visit, every time I needed you and you weren't there. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to talk? Not because there was a crisis to manage or a scandal to contain, just to ask how I was. Charles opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't answer. They both knew it. Harry stood and walked to the fireplace. Above it hung a portrait of Queen Elizabeth, his grandmother. She stared down with that familiar, composed expression, revealing nothing. Granny kept the family together, Harry said. Even when things were falling apart, she found a way. But she's gone now. And without her, he turned to face his father. We're all just pretending, aren't we? Pretending there's still something holding us together. There is something, Charles insisted. Blood, history, love, even if we've forgotten how to show it. Love shouldn't require forgetting how to show it. Charles stood abruptly. What do you want from me, Harry? Tell me, what would make this better? The question hung in the air. Harry realized his father was genuinely asking. Not rhetorically, not defensively. He really wanted to know. I want you to trust me, Harry said simply. I want to walk into a room with my father without being searched first. I want to have a conversation without wondering if every word is being analyzed by lawyers. I want, his voice caught. I want what we had in that photograph. Before everything got so complicated, we can't go back. I know. But we could go forward differently. Charles walked closer to his son. For the first time since Harry had arrived, there was less than an arm's length between them. How, after everything that's been said and done, how do we move forward? Harry looked directly into his father's eyes. You start by believing I'm not your enemy, that I never was. I'm just your son who got tired of suffocating in silence. And you start by understanding that my silence wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I didn't know how to help. How to fix it. I never needed you to fix it, Pa. I just needed you to see it, to acknowledge it. They stood there, two men shaped by the same impossible world, wounded by the same impossible expectations. Outside those walls, they were king and prince. Inside this room, they were just a father and son trying to find their way back to each other. Charles reached out slowly, hesitantly. His hand touched Harry's shoulder. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of years. I'm sorry, Charles said, and his voice broke. I'm sorry I had you searched. I'm sorry I made you feel like a threat instead of my child. Harry felt tears burn in his eyes, but refused to let them fall. I'm sorry, too. For the hurt I caused, for going public with things that were private. I thought I was protecting myself, but I see now that I wounded you, too. We've both wounded each other. Yeah, we have. Charles's hand remained on Harry's shoulder. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if it can be fixed. Maybe it doesn't need to be fixed. Maybe it just needs to be different. Different how? Harry took a breath. You stop treating me like a loose end that needs managing. And I stop expecting you to be something you can't be. We just try, as imperfect as that might be. Charles nodded slowly. I can try. Me too. They stood together in the silence that followed. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. But it was honest. And for the first time in years, honest felt like enough. Outside, Daniel checked his watch. 45 minutes had passed. He wondered what was being said behind those walls. Whether father and son were finding peace or creating new wounds. The door opened suddenly. Both Charles and Harry emerged. Their faces were composed, giving nothing away. But Daniel noticed something. They walked closer to each other than before. Not touching, but not maintaining that careful distance either. Daniel, Charles said as they approached. Your Majesty, in the future, Prince Harry will not be searched when visiting. Is that understood? Daniel felt relief flood through him. Yes, Your Majesty. Perfectly understood. Harry met Daniel's eyes and nodded slightly. A silent thank you. For earlier, for understanding. As Harry walked toward his car, Charles called out, Harry. Harry turned. Next month. Sunday lunch. Just the two of us. No advisors. No staff. just father and son. Harry was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Small, but real. I'd like that, Pa. So would I. Harry got into his car. As it pulled away, he looked back once. Charles stood at the entrance watching him leave. They raised their hands at the same time. A simple wave. A small gesture. But sometimes, small gestures carry the weight of the world. Daniel watched the car disappear down the drive. Charles had already gone back inside, but Daniel remained at his post, processing what he had witnessed. In all his years of service, he had never seen the king offer a lunch invitation with such visible hope in his voice. The moment felt fragile. Like glass that could shatter with the wrong move, he pulled out his phone and texted his son Marcus. "Free for dinner tonight? My treat." The reply came quickly. "Always everything okay? Everything's fine. Just want to see you." Daniel put his phone away and smiled. Sometimes you needed to be reminded that not every relationship required mending. Some just needed maintaining, nurturing, before the cracks had a chance to form. 3 weeks later, the day before the scheduled lunch, Harry sat in his home office staring at his phone. Charles had sent a brief message that morning. "Looking forward to tomorrow, noon. Oak Room." Just that. Nothing more. But Harry had read it a dozen times, searching for hidden meaning. Was his father truly looking forward to it? Or was this just another formal obligation? His wife found him there, lost in thought. "You're going right?" she asked gently. "I don't know. What if it's a disaster? What if we just end up fighting again? What if you don't go and spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been?" Harry looked up at her. "When did you get so wise? I married you, didn't I? Clearly my judgment is questionable." She smiled, but her eyes were serious. He reached out love. That matters. Whether the lunch goes well or not, the fact that he tried matters. What if I disappoint him again? What if he disappoints you? You can't control his reactions. You can only control yours. Harry nodded slowly. She was right. She was always right. That night, Harry barely slept. He rehearsed conversations in his mind. Things he wanted to say. Things he promised himself he wouldn't say. By morning, he was exhausted and nervous and uncertain all at once. But he got dressed. He got in the car. He went. Daniel was at his post again, but this time there was no tension. When Harry arrived, Daniel simply nodded respectfully and opened the door. "Good to see you again, Your Royal Highness." "You too, Daniel. How's your son?" Daniel was surprised, Harry remembered. "He's well, sir. Very well. Thank you for asking." Harry smiled and walked inside. The oak room looked different in daylight. Warmer somehow. Less imposing. Charles was already there, standing by a table set for two. No grand formal settings. Just simple plates, simple food. Like a normal lunch between normal people. "You came," Charles said, and Harry could hear genuine relief. "I said I would. No. But I wasn't sure." Charles trailed off. They sat down across from each other. A staff member served them quietly and then disappeared, leaving them alone. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile either. It was uncertain. Two people trying to find a starting point. "How's the family?" Charles asked finally. "Good. The children are growing so fast. They ask about you sometimes." Charles's face softened. "Do they? They want to know their grandfather. If that's something you'd want, I would want that very much." They ate in silence for a moment. Then Charles set down his fork. "I've been thinking a lot since you were here last. About what you said. About trust." Harry waited, not daring to interrupt. "You were right," Charles continued. "Having you searched was wrong. It came from a place of fear, not wisdom. I was so worried about protecting the institution that I forgot I was also supposed to protect my son." "Pa. No, let me finish. I spent my whole life waiting to be king, preparing for it. And now that I am, I realize that the crown can demand everything from you if you let it. Your time, your privacy, your relationships. I let it take my relationship with you, and I'm sorry for that." Harry felt his throat tighten. I'm sorry too. For the book, for the interviews, I was so angry, and I thought making everyone see my pain would somehow make it hurt less. But it didn't. It just created new pain. Can I ask you something? Charles said quietly. Anything. Yeah. If you could go back, would you do things differently? Harry considered the question carefully. Some things, yes. I wish I had tried harder to talk to you privately before going public. But leaving? Choosing my own path? No. I needed that. I needed to know I could exist outside of being the spare. Charles nodded. I understand that now. I didn't before, but I do now. And if you could go back. Charles smiled sadly. I would have listened more. Talked less about duty and more about feelings. I would have remembered that being a father is also a duty. Perhaps the most important one. He continued eating, but the atmosphere had shifted. Words came easier now. They talked about the children, about Charles's new responsibilities as king, about small memories from years past. Nothing deep. Nothing heavy. Just conversation. The kind fathers and sons are supposed to have. Asterisk at one point. Charles laughed at something Harry said, and Harry realized he couldn't remember the last time he had heard his father laugh. Really laugh. The sound was rusty, like something that hadn't been used in a long time. But it was real. As the meal wound down, Harry felt something unexpected. Hope. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind. Just the quiet, fragile kind that whispers, maybe things could be different. Can I show you something? Charles said suddenly. Of course. Charles led him to a small side room off the oak room. It was an office of sorts, filled with papers and books. But on the main desk, in the center where it couldn't be missed, was the photograph. The one of Charles with young Harry and William. Said you keep it on your desk, Harry said softly. I wasn't lying. I look at it every single day. Charles picked it up. I can't get those boys back. I can't undo the years that have passed, or the mistakes I've made. But maybe he looked at Harry. Maybe we can make new memories. Different ones. Not better or worse. Just ours. Harry took the frame from his father and stared at the three faces. All of them younger, unburdened, unbroken by the weight of what was to come. I'd like that, Harry said. New memories. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking at the past while standing in the present. Outside, the world continued its endless commentary on the royal family. The speculation, the judgment, the constant analysis. But in that small office, none of it mattered. There was just a father and a son, trying. Asterisk 6 months passed. They weren't perfect months. There were still awkward conversations, stilted phone calls, moments where old wounds threatened to reopen. But something fundamental had shifted. The wall between them, while not gone, had developed a door. Harry visited 4 more times. Each visit was a little easier than the last. Charles learned to ask about Harry's life without immediately offering royal solutions. Harry learned to share without turning every conversation into a list of grievances. They would never be like other fathers and sons. Their relationship would always carry the weight of crowns and cameras, of public scrutiny and private pain. But they were learning to exist within those limitations instead of being destroyed by them. Daniel noticed the change. Each time Harry arrived, there was less tension in his shoulders. Each time he left, there was less sadness in his eyes. It wasn't dramatic healing. It was gradual, quiet, real. One afternoon, as Harry was leaving after another lunch, Charles walked him to his car. It was unusual. The king rarely escorted anyone personally. But there they were, father and son, walking side by side through the grounds. I've been thinking, Charles said, about the children. Your children. Perhaps they could visit. Stay for a weekend. I could show them the gardens. Tell them stories about their grandmother. Harry stopped walking. You mean that? They're my grandchildren. I've missed too much already. They'd love that. They really would. Charles smiled. Then let's make it happen. Soon. Not someday. Soon. Okay, soon. They reached the car. Harry opened the door but didn't get in immediately. There was something he needed to say. Something he had been carrying for months. Pa, I need to tell you something. Charles's expression grew guarded. Old habits. It's nothing bad, Harry assured him quickly. I want you to know that I see what you're doing. The effort you're making. The way you're trying. And it means everything to me. It really does. Charles's eyes grew bright. For a moment, Harry thought his father might cry, but Charles just nodded, not trusting his voice. Harry got in the car. As he drove away, he looked in the rearview mirror. Charles stood there, watching him leave, his hand raised in that now familiar wave. And Harry realized something profound. His father wasn't perfect. He would never be the father Harry had needed as a child. Too much time had passed. Too many wounds had been inflicted. But he was trying to be the father Harry needed now. And maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be. That evening, Daniel finished his shift and drove home. He found Marcus in his apartment, cooking dinner. "It smells good," Daniel said. Hanging up his jacket pasta, your favorite. They ate together, talking about nothing important, work, whether a movie Marcus wanted to see. Normal father-son conversation, easy, comfortable. "Dad," Marcus said suddenly. "Yeah. I know you can't talk about work most of the time. Security and all that. But are you okay? You've seemed different lately. Lighter, maybe." Daniel thought about Harry and Charles, about the journey he had witnessed from the outside, about how easily relationships could break and how hard they were to mend. "I'm good," Daniel said. "Really good. I've just been reminded lately how important this is. Us, family. Not taking it for granted. We're solid, Dad. Always have been." "I know. But that's because we work at it. Because we talk. Because when things get hard, we don't run. We stay. Everything all right with you?" "Everything's fine. I just love you, kid. Wanted to make sure you knew that." Marcus reached across the table and squeezed his father's hand. "I know. Love you too." Simple words. Simple gesture. But Daniel felt the weight of their importance. This was what Harry and Charles were fighting for. This ease. This certainty. This knowledge that love didn't require perfection, just presence. Across London in his own home. Harry sat with his wife on their couch. The children were asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. "How was lunch?" she asked. "Good. Really good. He wants the kids to visit. That's wonderful." Yeah, Harry leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You know what's strange? I spent years being angry at him. Years convinced he would never change. And he hasn't, not completely. He's still formal, still bound by duty. But he's trying. And somehow, that's more than I expected." What changed? Harry thought about it. "I think we both realized we had a choice. Keep fighting until there was nothing left, or accept that we're both flawed and try anyway. We chose to try. And it's hard. It's awkward sometimes. But it's better than the alternative." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm proud of you. For not giving up, I almost did. That day he had me searched. I almost walked away and never came back. What stopped you?" Harry thought back to that moment outside Clarence's house. The look in his father's eyes. The resignation. The fear. I saw his pain. Not just mine. And I realized we were both suffering from the same wound, just from different sides. That's very wise. Or very tired. I'm not sure which." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of partnership. Outside, the world spun on. Inside, they had built something stable. Something safe. Harry's phone buzzed. A message from Charles. "Thank you for today. It meant more than you know. See you soon." Harry smiled and showed the message to his wife. "He's learning," she said. "We both are." We're somewhere in Clarence's house. Charles sat alone in his study. The photograph of his sons was in his hand again. He had been holding it for 20 minutes, remembering. Not just the past captured in the frame, but the present they were building. slowly, imperfectly, but building nonetheless. He thought about his own father, Philip, the emotional distance, the unspoken expectations, the love that was always assumed but rarely expressed. Charles had promised himself he would be different with his sons, but the crown had gotten in the way. The duty, the weight of centuries. Now, finally, he was learning what he should have known all along. Being king didn't mean sacrificing being a father. It meant learning to be both, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He set the photograph down and picked up his phone. Typed a message to William. "Can we talk? Soon, just the two of us?" It was a start. Another door to open. Another bridge to build, because that's what family did. They broke, and they mended, and they broke again. But if they were lucky, if they tried hard enough, they learned to hold on through all of it. Charles hit send. And then he waited. Outside, the sun was setting over London. Another day ending. Another day beginning. The cycle continued, indifferent to kings and princes, to fathers and sons. But within that cycle, in the small moments between grand history, real change was happening. The kind that wouldn't make headlines. The kind that mattered most. Father and son learning to trust again. One lunch at a time. One conversation at a time. One imperfect, beautiful, difficult moment at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most royal thing they could do. Not ruling perfectly, but healing honestly, not maintaining an image, but building a relationship, not being what everyone expected, but being what each other needed. That day, when Daniel had stood outside Clarence's house searching a prince for recording devices, he had witnessed something breaking. But he had also witnessed something else. The first crack in a wall that needed to come down. Sometimes breaking is the beginning of healing. Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most important connections. And sometimes a security guard standing at his post witnesses more than just protocol. He witnesses hope, and that, Daniel thought as he went home to his own son, was worth protecting more than any crown.